Now, when we're talking about committee, there are different committees and different rounds, right? And so I'm going to jump to the decision rounds really quick and understand this is that different rounds, there are different levels of viability per round, right? So what are the rounds, right? So there are different ways you can apply to a college, right? So you can apply early action to a college if they have early action or restricted early action. Typically, restricted early action is Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and I'm forgetting one, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and Princeton. And then you have early decision. Most schools have early decision. You have early decision 2. And sometimes even like a hidden early decision 3, or sometimes an early decision 0. What does that mean? It means that there's an early decision 0 that is rolling, right? And so you can find out about that early decision before even the early decision 1 deadline for other schools. What is early decision 3? It's informally called early decision 3, but it's early decision 2, right? It's just you can apply early decision 2 to that school even after you've heard back from your early decision 2 school, right? And so, those are some things you'll have to work with a counselor who's pretty, with it, understands the methods and the modes of different colleges to figure out what that actually means. But keep in mind that, and then there's regular decision, and then there's, the waitlist rounds. But, keep in mind that, yes, there are different, admit rates depending on the round you apply. With early decision, that is the easiest way to get into any college. It doesn't matter what college it is. That is where students have the highest admit rate. And so you have to keep in mind, I remember I was working with one of my students, Leo, and we were navigating whether or not we wanted to apply to Columbia early decision or Williams early decision. And, me and his family, we were on a call for about 2 hours trying to decide whether or not we want to do Williams or Columbia. And he wanted to do set design, which is really exciting. People are like, oh yeah, Columbia, obviously, but not necessarily, because Williams is actually incredible when it comes to set design and whatnot. And so with that being said, we went back and forth, but one of the things that stood out was that Williams College, their early decision applications at 800 applicants, right? And their regular decision applications, so they only have early decision and regular decision, their regular decision applicants are like what? It was something like 17,000. I could be wrong on that number, but it's somewhere up there, very, very high. And then when we were looking at Columbia's early decision, like their early decision is 5,000 students, and the regular decision applicants were like 45,000 students, right? And so both are excellent colleges, some of the best colleges in the country, and we went up, we ultimately went with Williams because, that's where he decided that he felt like he would be best at. But also, it was really important to keep in mind those numbers, right? Like that's huge. Like to be an applicant in 1 in 800 students versus, 1 in 17,000 students, that is a big difference, right? And there's typically colleges are filling up about half their class in early decision, right? So basically, if you have a class of 356 students, right? And you're taking 175 of them in early decision out of a pool of 800, and then taking the other 100 and something students, out of a pool of 17,000 kids. That's a big difference in your likelihood of admit, to that institution. So you want to keep that in mind. And this is where we get into the enrollment strategy versus preference. Enrollment strategy, what is that? Is strategizing your ability to, or just basically strategizing your application to be admitted at an institution. Major does matter when you apply to, bigger schools, or even smaller schools like liberal arts colleges versus, a bigger school like UT Austin. For example, I know that this past cycle, if you were a computer science major and you were a boy, like that was one of the most ridiculous application pools to be in the last cycle. I had not seen so many applicants, boys, who were just absolutely crushed in the admissions process when they indicated computer science as a major. Same thing with business. It was just so hard because there are so many boys out there who want to do computer science, who want to major in business. And, I've seen it, like students who applied to the same school, who applied to different majors, like the student who had typically the student who had like a major that wasn't as popular was the student who got in, even if they weren't as good of a student. There are many students who got into, schools like UT Austin and USC, who were not as good of students as others. It was just their major selection, right? Everyone wants to do business. Everyone, wants to do computer science. You want to take a look at the gender of the major you're applying to. How many people are applying? Typically, boys who apply to liberal arts schools or liberal arts colleges, like the School of Liberal Arts at UT Austin, or the School of Arts and Sciences, or a liberal arts college. Typically, that's going to be more female heavy, and so they're going to favor boys more, right? Because again, they want to value to some extent a gender ratio or a gender balance. Not always, not to the extent of the quality of the class, but typically that is something that's going to be mindful and really important, because there are certain majors that are going to be female dominated, and sometimes to see a boy who's interested in, I don't know, education, or who wants to teach lower elementary school, is interesting, because when you think about this, how many male teachers did you have as a lower elementary school student? Not many. I didn't have one. I had one male teacher, and there were like 3 male teachers at my entire elementary school, right? And so to see a boy, for example, in that context is great. And on the reverse side of things, let's say you are a girl who really loves engineering, who loves math and science. Well, that's a male dominant field, right? So maybe, interestingly enough, like, oh, like, I was thinking about math, but maybe I will apply to the engineering school, because you might have a better chance of being admitted than to the School of Arts and Sciences, because that is girl dominant and girl heavy. So some things to keep in mind as you're kind of navigating this process. How you apply matters, how you apply with your major, what decision round you apply with, and the way the institution is conducting their reads in the communities, all of that matters. So please, please, please keep that in mind.